Chapter 1: Crabby the Crab and His Grumpy Beach Life. On a tiny sunny island in the middle of the big blue ocean, there lived a crab. But not just any crab. This crab was grumpy. His name was Crabby, and he lived up to it. All day long, Crabby scuttled back and forth on the hot sand, grumbling about everything. "The sun is too bright," he huffed, shaking his claws at the sky. "The sand is too sandy," he grumbled, kicking a tiny shell. "And the waves are way too splashy." He snapped, shaking a claw at the ocean. The seagulls flying above looked at each other. "Wow," one of them whispered. "That guy is really crabby." Crabby kept scuttling. He dug little holes in the sand and sat in them, but none of his holes ever felt right. He sat under a palm tree, but boom, a coconut fell right next to him. He frowned at it. "Oh, great! Now the trees are throwing things at me." He tried to take a nap by the water, but whoosh! A big wave rolled in and splashed him. Crabby let out a dramatic sigh. "This is the worst day ever." He said this every day. But today, something was different. Today, someone was watching him. From the shallow water, a little round fish with big googly eyes was bouncing up and down. His name was Bubbles the pufferfish. And Bubbles had never seen anyone look so grumpy on such a beautiful day. He took a deep breath, puffed up his round belly, and shouted, "Hey, crab guy, why do you look like you just ate a lemon?" Crabby froze. He squinted at the bubbly fish in front of him. "What? Who are you?" "I'm Bubbles, and you, my friend, look like the grumpiest crab in the whole ocean." Crabby crossed his claws. "I'm not grumpy, this is just my face." Bubbles floated closer, tilting his head. I don't think so. I think you're just lonely." Crabby scoffed. "That's ridiculous. I have everything I need. My sand, my waves, my whatever." Bubbles grinned. "Well, if you're so happy, then why don't you smile?" Crabby tried to smile. His face twitched, his claws wiggled, but nothing happened. Bubbles giggled. "Yep, you forgot how to be happy." Crabby rolled his eyes. "I do not need to be happy." But Bubbles wasn't listening. He was already bouncing up and down, splashing excitedly. "Come with me, you need to meet my friends. We do all kinds of fun things." Crabby groaned. "I don't do fun things." But before he could say anything else, Bubbles took a deep breath, puffed up like a balloon, and rolled Crabby across the sand like a bowling ball. "Let's go!" Crabby tumbled forward, covered in sand and seaweed. "Oh, great," he muttered. "This is definitely the worst day ever." But deep down, just a tiny bit, he was curious. And maybe, just maybe, things were about to change. Chapter 2: Meeting the Cool Crustaceans. Crabby tumbled to a stop in a shallow tide pool. He groaned and shook the sand off his shell. "Ugh, I think I just rolled over a jellyfish." "Nope, you're good," Bubbles said cheerfully. "Welcome to the best spot on the island." Crabby looked around. The tide pool was bigger than he expected. The water was crystal clear, and all around him, sea creatures were having fun. A tall red lobster was riding the waves like a surfer. A tiny shrimp was leading a group of fish in a synchronized swimming routine. And a hermit crab wearing a coconut shell was handing out what looked like seaweed party hats. Crabby squinted. "What is this place?" "It's where the cool crustaceans hang out," Bubbles said. "Everyone here is awesome. You'll love it." Crabby crossed his claws. "Doubt it." Just then, the tall lobster rode a wave right up to them and landed with a splash. "Wah! New guy alert!" "What's up, little dude?" the lobster said. Crabby frowned. "Who are you?" "Name's Lenny the lobster, but my friends call me Lenny the legendary." Crabby rolled his eyes. "I think I'll just call you Lenny." Lenny laughed. "Fair enough, my dude." Next, the tiny shrimp swam over, flipping zap through the water like a gymnast. "I'm Shelly. You're just in time for synchronized swimming practice," she squeaked. Crabby scoffed. "I don't do swimming practice." Shelly shrugged. "That's okay. You can just watch me be amazing." She did a tiny backflip and waved. Finally, the hermit crab in the coconut shell waddled up and placed a seaweed party hat on Crabby's head. "Welcome, my dude. I'm Big Red. You're officially one of us now." Crabby snatched the hat off. "I don't do parties." Big Red grinned. "That's what I used to say. Then I discovered fun, changed my life." Crabby groaned. This was already too much talking, too much smiling. "Look, I don't need new friends, I don't need fun, I just need some peace and quiet." Bubbles grinned. "Ooh, perfect. Then you'll love our next game, shell bowling." Crabby blinked. "What?" Big Red held up a shiny shell. "We roll these at some sticks and try to knock them over. It's the greatest game of all time." Lenny cracked his claws. I hold the record. No big deal, Shelley smirked. That's because you're the only one with giant lobster claws. Lenny grinned. Not my fault I was born an athlete. Before Crabby could argue, Big Red handed him a shell. Come on, grumpy guy. Just one try. Crabby sighed, but only because I want to prove I'm bad at this. He lined up his shell, took a deep breath, and rolled. Crash! The sticks went flying. Everyone cheered. Bubbles spun in a circle. Whoa! First try. You're a natural, Crabby blinked. Had he just won? Big Red clapped him on the back. Dude, that was legendary, Lenny nodded. Okay, I might have competition now. Crabby felt something weird. His claws were tingling. His face felt strange. Wait, was he smiling? Bubbles gasped. Was that a smile? Crabby quickly wiped it away. No, you're imagining things, but it was too late. Lenny, Shelley, and Big Red cheered louder. Crabby cracked a smile. It's a miracle. The prophecy has been fulfilled, Crabby groaned. This is terrible. I can't stop enjoying things. Bubbles grinned. Told ya, fun is contagious. And for the first time in forever, Crabby wasn't so sure he hated that. Chapter 3, The Big Realization. Why was he so crabby? As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Crabby sat on a smooth rock, watching the others play in the tide pool. He wasn't grumbling. He wasn't frowning. In fact, he felt kind of good. Lenny was riding another wave, yelling "Cowabunga!" every time he splashed into the water. Shelley and Big Red were stacking seashells into a wobbly tower, while Bubbles floated upside down, giggling at his own reflection. Crabby let out a long sigh. What is happening to me? Bubbles bounced over, looking extra puffy. You're having fun, buddy, Crabby shook his head. No way, not me. I don't do fun. Bubbles grinned. Oh yeah? Then why are you still here? Crabby opened his mouth, then closed it. Good question. Normally, by now he would have stormed off, muttering about how the sand was too sandy or the sun was too bright. But today, he didn't want to leave. He actually liked being here. Wait, did he just like something? He frowned and tapped his claws together. Okay, I need to think. This is getting weird. Bubbles tilted his head. Weird how? Crabby sighed. I don't feel cranky or mad or even a little bit grumpy. Bubbles clapped his fins. Success! The power of fun has defeated the grumpiest crab in the ocean, Crabby groaned. Don't make a big deal about it. Bubbles ignored him. So tell me, Crabby, why do you think you were so grumpy before? Crabby shrugged. I dunno. I just always felt annoyed. Like something was missing. Bubbles nodded. And now? Crabby looked at the tide pool where his new friends were laughing, playing, and being weird in the best way possible. Then it hit him. I was lonely. He blinked in surprise. He had never said that out loud before. I thought I liked being alone, but really, I just didn't have anyone to do things with. Bubbles grinned. Exactly. That's what I've been telling you. Crabby groaned. You're gonna say I told you so, aren't you? Bubbles puffed up like a balloon. I told you so! Crabby rolled his eyes. All right. You were right. I get it. Bubbles did a happy little spin. And now you have friends, which means no more being Crabby the Crabby Crab. From now on, you're... He tapped his fin to his chin. Crabby the Cool Crab. Crabby thought about it. I guess that does sound better. Bubbles cheered. Yes, we did it! Just then, Lenny, Shelley, and Big Red scuttled over. Hey, Crabby, we're starting a game of who can jump the highest out of the water. You in? Crabby hesitated. The old him would have said no right away, but the new him, he cracked a tiny smile. All right, but I make no promises. Shelley grinned. You already won shell bowling. Maybe you'll surprise yourself again. The Crabby sighed dramatically. You guys are gonna make me like things, aren't you? Big Red nodded. Yep, that's kind of what friends do. And just like that, Crabby scuttled after them, ready to try something new. And for once, he wasn't grumbling about it. Chapter 4, Spreading the Happiness. A new Crabby Crab arrives. The next morning, Crabby woke up feeling different. For the first time ever, he didn't wake up muttering about how the sun was too bright or the waves were too splashy. Instead, he stretched his claws, took a deep breath, and thought, not bad. He scuttled over to the tide pool where his new friends were already playing. Lenny was balancing on a floating log, Shelley was practicing underwater twirls, and Big Red was stacking seaweed into what he claimed was going to be the biggest seaweed castle ever built. Crabby smirked. Morning, weirdos, Bubbles gasped dramatically. Did Crabby just greet us without complaining? I must be dreaming. Lenny chuckled. Bro, you're one of us now. Crabby sighed. Ugh, I know, it's horrible, Shelley snickered. You love it. Crabby rolled his eyes. But the truth was, she wasn't wrong. Then, just as he was about to join in, something caught his eye. Down the beach, near the edge of the water, there was another crab. A very grumpy-looking crab. He was kicking sand at a tiny fish, shaking his claws at the waves and muttering loudly to himself. The sand is too sandy. The ocean is too wet. The birds are looking at me funny. Crabby's eyes widened. Oh no, Bubbles followed his gaze. Oh yes, it's another Crabby. Crabby sighed. He's not another Crabby, he's just like how I used to be. Bubbles giggled. So another Crabby. Lenny cracked his claws. Dude looks like he needs a friend. Crabby hesitated. Just a few days ago he had been that crab, grumpy, alone, and convinced he didn't need anyone. Now he was happy. And maybe this new crab just needed a little push, just like Bubbles had done for him. He took a deep breath and scuttled over. The grumpy crab looked up and scowled. What do you want? Crabby smirked. Oh, nothing. Just noticed you were in a bad mood. Thought I'd say hi. The crab snorted. I'm always in a bad mood. Crabby chuckled. Yeah, I used to say that too. The crab frowned. Huh? Crabby sat down next to him. Let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a crab who thought he didn't need anyone. He spent all his time grumbling and being alone. The crab crossed his claws. Sounds like a smart crab. Crabby smirked. That's what he thought too. But then he met a weird little pufferfish, got tricked into playing some silly games, and realized that having friends is way more fun than being grumpy all the time. The crab snorted. Yeah, right. Crabby pointed at the tide pool side where his friends were laughing, playing, and throwing seaweed at each other for no reason at all. See those guys? They made me smile for the first time in forever. Trust me, if they can make me happy, they can make anyone happy. The crab hesitated. I don't know. Crabby shrugged. Look, you don't have to come, but if you ever feel tired of being crabby, maybe just come check it out. He turned and started scuttling back. For a moment, the other crab stayed put, looking out at the waves. Then, slowly, he stood up and followed. Crabby smirked to himself. Looks like there was about to be one less grumpy crab on the island. Chapter 5, The Happiness Keeps Spreading. Crabby led the new crab back to the tide pool, where his friends were still goofing off. Big Red was balancing 5 shells on his head. Lenny was flexing his claws in front of a tiny fish who looked completely unimpressed. And Shelley was spinning in circles, trying out a new dance she called the Wiggly Wiggle. Bubbles was the first to notice Crabby's return. He gasped dramatically. What? Is that another Crabby? Crabby rolled his eyes. He's not another Crabby. His name is, he turned to the new crab. The crab sighed. Snappy, Bubbles giggled. Snappy. Oh, I love it. Snappy narrowed his eyes. Don't make a big deal out of it. Big Red grinned. Oh, buddy, around here we make a big deal out of everything. Before Snappy could escape, he plopped a seaweed party hat onto his head. Snappy pulled it off immediately. I don't do parties, Crabby smirked. That's what I said too. Lenny cracked his claws. Let's put him through the official tide pool fun test. Snappy crossed his claws. I don't want to take a test. Bubbles floated closer, grinning. It's not that kind of test. You just have to do 3 fun things. If you hate all 3, you can leave and be grumpy forever. Snappy narrowed his eyes. Fine, but only because I want to prove how unfun this is. Big Red clapped his claws together. All right, let the fun begin. First, they handed Snappy a shiny shell and told him to roll it at a stack of sticks. He grumbled about how ridiculous it was, but with a sigh, he took aim and rolled it. The shell crashed into the sticks, sending them flying in all directions. Everyone cheered, but Snappy just blinked. That was fine, Bubbles giggled. Ooh, somebody had fun, Snappy huffed. It was acceptable. What's next? Before he could escape, Shelley grabbed his claw. Now you have to do my new dance, the Wiggly Wiggle. Snappy scowled. I don't dance. Crabby smirked. That's what I said too. Shelley demonstrated the move. Wiggle left, wiggle right, spin in a circle, and shake your claws like you're very confused. Snappy groaned. This is ridiculous. But the group just stared at him expectantly, so with another sigh, he gave it a try. Wiggle left, wiggle right, spin, shake. The moment he did it, the whole group burst into laughter. Even Snappy looked a little unsure of himself. I feel ridiculous. Crabby patted his shell. That's kind of the point. Lenny stepped forward, pointing at the water. All right, last one. You gotta jump in and make the biggest splash possible. Snappy snorted. Easy. He backed up, ran forward, and leaped into the water. Splash! Water flew everywhere. Big Red was knocked over, Shelly shrieked, and Bubbles spun in circles, giggling like crazy. Everyone cheered. Snappy blinked, wiping water from his face, and for a split second, Crabby saw it. A tiny, almost hidden smile. Bubbles gasped. We did it! We broke the Crabby curse! Snappy quickly hid his smile. I wasn't smiling. That was just my face doing a thing. Crabby smirked. That's what I said too. The group laughed, and before Snappy could escape, Big Red threw a seaweed hat on his head again. Snappy sighed. Fine, but just this once. The group cheered again. Crabby looked at Bubbles, shaking his head. Well, look at that. Fun is contagious. Bubbles grinned. Told ya. And from that day on, there was one less grumpy crab on the island. And maybe, just maybe, tomorrow, there would be another.